This is Farmer French directly from their website. This is high minus low directly from their website. And these are the calculations we did. The correlation between the two is 99% for the first one and 98% for the second one. So we successfully replicated the returns that they found, and that goes all the way back from it would show here. It goes all the way back from 1926 to 2020. So we did that, and then what Brian and I were working on is we were able to just plot it. So we, for example, took a random portfolio called size. It's from MSCI. It's just a smart beta index that has certain factors. And long story short, we ran a regression. This is just an example, but on OLS, we found that the only significant one was its market premium, was like the market risk to the beta.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense. And we have that, and it's only one that has a low p-value. As you change the fund, you have ones that are more or less significant. So long story short, we replicated Farmer French, and we were able to show the regression that it has on an index, increasing the capital asset pricing model.
Jordan, go down a little further. This is also good. So we have 4 different colors on this graph. Also, this is all very rough drafty. This is no final presentation. I'll clean all this up for next Friday and make it look presentable. Obviously, we're not going to show them lines of code. You can see that the green, the yellow is what the actual returns were, and the green is what the model is saying the returns are estimated to be, right? So this is the green and the yellow are your in sample, and then the red is your out of sample prediction, and the blue is your targets, right? So if we were to use basic ordinary least squares, the red line is what we're predicting the excess returns to be of this specific fund, and the blue is what they're supposed to be. So clearly you can see that it's good, but it's not great. And so the next step, what we're doing is we're going to compare how good the predictions are using OLS to the neural network. And that will prove to us, right, that using an AI-based approach should get us better numbers and a better estimate to what really is going to happen than a traditional ordinary least squares approach.
The key thing here, like for everyone who's like obviously like taking stochastic and like the Brownian motion, we're not predicting what's going to happen next period with today's information. We're not doing that right now. We're simply focusing on minimizing the dispersion between the green and the yellow line and the red and the blue line.
And so once we have these yellow, in other words, in very simple kind of elementary terms, once we have the red line, all this red line is just estimated returns in specific days. That's all what it is. So once we do that for, let's say, 5 different funds, I'll give that to Randy, and I'll say, and Randy, what Randy will do is he'll create a portfolio that takes certain positions in those funds based on these returns. And then he'll compare, and then we'll compare what his optimizer tool recommends as opposed to some of the benchmarks, right? And then you'll see how a certain portfolio allocation method outperforms a different portfolio allocation method. And that we'll get into that kind of when we cross that road, which is not too far out. But it's important to understand that this red line is generated. The neural network version of this red line is generated. Now we just need to compare the two, I'm going to get it over to Randy. And what he's going to do is compare, if we use the same strategy to allocate, right, does neural network outperform OLS? And then if we use a different strategy on the same estimation, will a different strategy outperform given the same set of data? So there's two approaches that Randy can kind of, and I'll let him talk about this, but there's 2 approaches down that path.
Okay. Yeah, so like my phase is to determine the actual like construction of the portfolio. And so over the past couple of weeks, I have been trying to convert everything that I've learned by speaking with Professor Zulaga and from the textbook that I've been reading into actual code to try to determine the actual weights of whatever inputs I'm given. And so I have been working on that for about a week or two. And it's like very raw right now. I'm just testing it with like 4 random equities, just trying to figure out how to get the code right based on what I've learned and how to get a final result out of that. And then after I can do that, I will generalize it so that we can do that for any given input that we have. And this is just for the basic mean variance approach. And then after that is good, then I will expand to other options that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing that's kind of cool, it's not like it's talked about now, but if you remember, like in the conference talked about like non-stationary data. Right here, you can see this is our epsilon. In the end, like this is our error term essentially, and it's not normally distributed, but it's close to. And because of that, you can't necessarily model that in a linear model, which we are. So we're going to be playing around with that distribution, trying to make it a perfectly normal distribution. But that's not for now. That's just something that we make note of now to look at later.
Yeah, so once the system is established, then we can tweak it to make sure it fits assumptions. That's kind of the first you build it and then you fix it. That's kind of the thing. It's never going to be perfect the first time out. That's something down the road. But as long as we have the system built out, it's a fix of how we basically need to take a function of the data set, which is something I have experience in doing. We just need to do it and figure out what exact transformations we want to have the data fit the way we want.
Okay, and we're meeting again with Manish on the 13th, so that gives us enough time. All right, so I wanted to move on between this and the falling knives. Jack and Mike. I don't think Ramos is here. Can we touch base a little bit as to what's going on with the index? The Lehigh index.
Ramos said that there were going to be people joining today. I don't know if they're here or not.
You're right, at 1:50. Let me double check.
Yeah, because I think Ramos said he wanted to bring someone in from either CSB or just computer science in general. I think Trevor and
let me see if he's coming.
Honestly, I don't know. He wasn't here. He wasn't in our meeting this week, so I don't know what he was saying with that.
I think what he wanted to do was bring someone in to help with the website.
Okay. So as soon as they join, we'll listen to it. So meantime, let's take a look. Let's listen a little bit with Hua and Ao Cheng and company and the Falling Knives and their presentation of it. Haven't heard from them last week. Hi, guys.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
everyone. I'm sorry first because last week we had the exam, so we missed.
It happens.
No, yeah, it won't happen. And
That's
this
okay.
week, yeah, okay, thank you. This week, we will give our process, give our midterm presentation. So would you please let me share the screen?
You should be able to.
Yeah, okay, thank you. First, let me open the PPT. Yeah, here.
Good. There we go.
Okay, can you see? Okay. First, as last time we mentioned, we use a classification, and so far with boosting method, we successfully improved the accurate rate. Accurate rate is the proportion of or true prediction to the total observation. But we still want to reduce the false positive, as last time we mentioned, because false positive in the falling knife is considered to be a more severe misclassification than false negative. To reduce the false positive, we can bear some cost that false negative increase in some degree. Of course, in some degree, because we cannot bear this cost infinitively. So the first method we use is boosting, which is a machine learning method. And then we list some focus points. And I think Hao Cheng, Richie, and our other members can discuss about our focus points. So maybe Hao Cheng can give some opinion.
Hello. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so like thanks for having me. Like, so I'm thinking about the sentiment and the rumor. So like I've always considering what kind of like machine learning techniques we can add the sentiment and rumor into our model. I've reading some articles online that's about a news review. So like in that model, they are using a logistic regression to extract some of the words in a single review to put into the model to detect whether this review is a positive or a negative review of the film. So like pretty similar to this movie review, we can also try to use the logistic regression to implementing this machine learning techniques into our model to test like for example, there were some news before the earnings report, and like there were some staff movements inside the company when some news are released. So we can use this method to test if this reporting all the staff movements will cause a negative or the positive effects on the stock price in
That's
the following
interesting.
days.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So you're also using sentiment analysis.
Yeah, logistic regression is one of the methods that can be utilized to extract features out of the review, like for some to detect the keywords in a review. So like this method can test whether this review is positive or negative.
Mike, isn't that what, Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, isn't that don't you guys use the same thing in Inca Digital for your?
Very similar, yeah. We
Okay.
scan, we perform sentiment analysis by using different APIs to actually quantify it. So whether it's like 0.2, negative 0.4, or like -1 if it's extremely negative versus positive.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we will also borrow some advantages from some algorithms like such as neural work, such as rigid classification, because for us, this falling knife project is under a much more extreme market condition, and we try to minimize the false positive as much as possible. So this time this is our objective function adjustment, and I think our members will give some opinions on this objective function adjustment to improve our algorithm. And okay, and in addition, our member Tianjia Yu, who is an FRM, indicates that if the potential investor is more risk averse, he may be more averse in false positive prediction. So we can set a option to choose the risk aversion level to let the model more suitable for him, for the potential investor. I think maybe he can give us some opinions. Hey, are you there?
Who are you talking to?
Tianjia Yu.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, so which member can give some additional opinion?
Oh, can you move on to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like overfitting is also one of the kind of issue in our model currently. So like as this slide tells us, like bagging can be a feasible solution. So like it is used in the averages of all models, like so to get a.
I can't. Is it me or I can't hear what he's saying?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hao Cheng, are you speaking?
Yeah, Professor, can you hear me?
Very quiet.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear Hao Cheng, Professor?
I could a little bit, but go ahead. It's very faint for some reason.
Yeah. So I was talking about the overfitting issue in our model, and besides the bagging method in this slide, we can also try the ridge classifier, which is another way to utilize the ridge regression in regression machine learning. So like, but since we are doing in a classification model, so like we need to use the ridge classifier to which can may solve the overfitting issue, because the ridge regression can effectively solve the overfitting issue in a regression model. So like we are hoping that the ridge classifier can also solve the overfitting issue in our classification model.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we will keep implementing this method into our model and to test its validity.
Yeah. Yes. First, to clarify, we use classification, not regression, because regression is a model on continuous variable rather than discrete variable. We found that very difficult to model the falling knife on continuous return, because the time was very tight. in the beginning of our project, so we turn to classification model, but we will still borrow some advantages from the regression algorithms, such as neuron work, such as regression tree, to improve our performance, to prove our model performance. But so far, this is what we did, and I think our ultimate target is to construct a user interface, which has been discussed by Richie Tang, by Chang, by our other members. I think maybe we can construct a basic interface in December, before January. I think a very basic user interface is.
It's okay. I mean, if it's not done, we could take it to January, because I'm going to have the same class running anyway. So don't feel too.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Rich Tang has some opinions on our target and on our algorithm.
Yeah, actually, just this, the next one, the next PowerPoint. Yeah, just for this one, you can see for left hand side, this is the hyper plate for the normal SVM I just mentioned, and you can see for the right part of the left function, it is just one factor here to minimize to consist the objective function. But for the right part, we just we will separate it into two different parts. For the mid part, this will be the positive, and for the right part, this will be the negative. Just some will be recovered or will not be recovered, and you can see now the weight C becomes like C1 and C2, and we will give different weight to these two, the different parts. And then the model will be like, we're trying to predict the data to be will not recover. And then it will also have it will also performance good to predict the stocks which will recover. So the weight to predict I mean, some stocks will not recover, and we try to predict all the stocks to be not recover. But when the stock performs very good, it will predict it to recover. So we will just pick the best stocks with this model. So it will just solve the problem which I just talked about. And this we are working on the coding of this part. This is what
very good.
I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah. And I think Ziwan and Yixing have some opinions on the method bagging to solve the overfitting problem. Would you please give us some opinions, Ziwan and Yixing? They work on this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, as the PowerPoint shows, the bagging maybe is a feasible solution to it, but in bagging, introduce the individual classifier, but rather averages altogether. But for the period from now on, we're still working on the average them altogether.
Yes, I think Kenja is mute, so I just told you his opinion and what he works on and what he is working on. So this is what we did so far, and I think we will continue our work. Yeah, I think it will be much more difficult for us to continue, but we will try our best. The next barrier for us is the objective function adjustment, because it's a harder algorithm. And then I think the most difficult thing for us to do is the UI design, because it's totally a CS work. Now we are all working on that.
Very good. Good job, Yoa. Thank you very much. I mean, it's been what, a year since we started this, right? With Kai and I mean, we started.
Yeah, they actually they give us very important opinions and reference to begin our project, and thanks for them we learn how to correctly find the data and the data source. That's it.
Great. Okay, let me see if our next, Catherine is here, and thanks you very much. I'll take a look at the, can you on screen?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Okay, let me end it. End it.
I think Trevor is here and Catherine. Okay, thank you guys. All right, moving on to quickly, because then we have Ethereum at 2:30. What do we have? Trevor is here, Eric is here. Jack, where's Jack? Jack is here. Mike is here. All right, so let's have a quick discussion on the, by the way, Eric, Trevor, where's Catherine? Oh, hi, I see you. So these are undergraduates, and they're more on the computer science side, Jack and Mike. Ramos is on the way to the airport. I don't know where he's flying. He's going somewhere to JFK. So good luck. So I guess Trevor, guys, we wanted to talk to you a little bit because, I mean, Jack and Mike could chime in there in terms of what your needs are and what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, so I don't know how much Ramos briefed you guys on essentially what our Capstone project is, but
why don't we start with that actually? What has Ramos told you, just so we know where to fill in?
Yeah. He just told me that there is an index project, and he was gonna call me about it, but then we decided we would just wait till today to discuss.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys are all CS students, or are you CSB?
I am a BIS major with a CS minor, so I have like experience with it. I just don't have like the higher level classes really.
I'm a finance major, BIS minor, but like I just have a little bit of coding experience.
Gotcha.
I'm a finance major with a probability and statistics minor, but I have a good amount of coding experience just from like learning on my own.
All right, sweet. So I don't need to explain what an index is. That's good. I'm currently a senior undergraduate finance major, but I'm going into MFE starting in the spring. Basically, the idea of the project, Professor Nayar, that's Nandu Nayar, Professor Nayar, to just be distinct between the BIS Professor Nayar and the finance Professor Nayar, has tasked us with a project to build an equity index of Pennsylvania headquartered equities. So like think of it like the S&P 500 for Pennsylvania, except instead of it being the 500 whatever selective companies, it includes every company. So every Pennsylvania equity, and obviously this changes as firms get bought out with LBOs or come to the market with an IPO or a SPAC or whatever you see them coming in as. So what we're trying to do is, create an index. The actual creation of the index part, for those of you with the finance background know, it's fairly easy to do. It's just a matter of developing a way to present it. So part of it is there's a back end issue in bringing the data in on this. So there's different ways we can do this. The one way that I would think would be the easiest would be using some type of Bloomberg functionality to pull this in. Although I've been hearing from Brian, who may or may not be here, that the Bloomberg UI for Python is awful to figure out. But there's free reign with that and how we want to bring that in. And then we also need to present it to actually present the index as something, which would involve something to the effect of, building a website, explaining what this is, how we've calculated it and what the value is for it. And then part of it, what comes in for Mike and I is like, how do we use this? So what we're talking about doing is using some type of tool to show a market driver, to show this as a market driver for the S&P or for IWM or, various other indexes. And the point of it is like, if you had, say, a Pennsylvania, the example Professor Nair uses, if you had a Pennsylvania politician who's trying to bring funding to Pennsylvania, he can say to someone that might only be familiar with, certain other areas of markets is, oh, well, New York is the financial capital of the world, which obviously it is, but, oh, hey, Pennsylvania equities are driving the market by this much in whatever factors. And that's where we're bringing this in. And that's the end goal with it. So, we're looking for some way to bring the data in through whatever is going to be easiest here. And then present it as, an equity index that, the best case scenario for use is eventually some banks creating some product involved with this, or you could look at it just as a market research standpoint. But yeah,
Or
so
you could
do you guys have
refer,
any questions?
yeah. I mean, basically, it could be a marketing tool for the program as well,
That as well,
What is,
yeah.
Yeah, what is, for example, Yale has the, what is this? The most famous one, I think, is Yale. They have the pricing
Housing market.
housing
Yeah.
market, right? So boom, if you want to know
Which
what's
now
going on
is
with,
used.
that's it. Which professor?
So
So
to give
essentially,
you an idea,
you're just asking
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
companies that are headquartered in PA.
Essentially, we want we
yeah.
essentially need someone to help with data scraping so that we can get every equity along with their candlestick prices for like a specific time range that are headquartered or solely in PA, because this is going to be an index that's strictly based on PA companies.
And Eric and Catherine and Trevor, we got you for the other project that we're working on. We got you the subscription to Yahoo Professional or whatever, right? Maybe that could get you there too. I haven't looked at it yet, but that looks like, I know Ra has access to it. Do you guys have access to it, Catherine?
Yes, he sent us the login. I'm actually supposed to write some code for Falling Knife. I just had a few like several exams this week, but so also just like a question, is it kind of almost like a statistical analysis of what's going on with the company, with the like Pennsylvania equities sort of?
Well, the actual index is a market weighting. So if you recall from like, I think they talk about this in Fin 125, it might be in 323, but when you take we're creating a market weighted index. So it's an index that the S&P 500 is calculated this way, for instance.
Right. No, yeah,
and that
definitely.
actually, there's no true statistical analysis that goes with that. The statistical analysis comes in where it's like, oh, I want to see the correlation of this index versus the S&P. And then, you could do things like, you could, for instance, you could take this is way a ton of steps down the line, but you could run a linear regression or any kind of regression really for this index and then see like, oh, if Pennsylvania goes up, the market should be doing this, or, you know, things like that. That's a little bit later down the line.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
yeah.
That makes
More,
sense.
more
'cause-
specifically, what we plan on doing is, like, if you look at the S&P 500, they have all the different sectors. So like tech, financials, healthcare, stuff like that. So what we want to actually do is, once this index is built, is separate it into those specified sectors, so that someone who is working in industrials or healthcare or tech in a PA-based company can look at this and those specific indices and see, okay, this is how much it's moving in a day. Like, how can we compare that to our own company?
Yeah, because I think the thing, or what I might be most like helpful in, I know like it's later on down the line, but just is comparing the statistics of this like index that we're making to like the rest of the market, just because I have a good amount of experience with statistics and I know how to like, you know, use programming to sort of depict those. So I was just gonna say that's probably the area where I would be the most helpful in, but I don't know. I mean, I guess that's later on.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, Catherine, that'd be great. I actually have some experience there too with some statistical arbitrage, I guess is what you would call it, to try and price with that. So,
Although at the end of the day, what we want, this thing has to be able to live beyond you, right? It's not just a one thing for this semester. Then we'll house it somewhere, and then it feeds itself somehow. Or
Right.
that's
So
an
yeah,
important
we're
aspect.
thinking either an app or a link on the MFE website, just something even after we graduate that people can click on and see how it's
And I'll
doing.
make sure whatever happens at the bottom somehow we'll put like originally designed and conceived by you guys, so that it always stays there forever.
Yeah. So, you guys have any other questions?
So what's the next step here?
We need to do some scraping, which, you know, I just want to be clear. Mike and I don't really know much about what we should be doing from a coding perspective here, but of course we're willing to learn. So, you know, don't feel like it's oh, just do something. Like, please bring us in, show us how you're doing things, because, you know, we want to understand it as well. We got to learn this stuff too. So, yeah. So if you guys have any other questions, you know.
I think it would definitely be a learning experience for me too, because I don't know as much about all the finance stuff, and I'm not sure I know exactly what to do right away in terms of this project. But it would be something I got to think about for a while, and I would have to try and learn and figure it out with you know, Catherine and Eric and you guys. So yeah, it definitely is not something I just like right away would know what to do, but I'm sure it's doable. You know.
Yeah. From a direction standpoint, like what we're looking for right away is we're looking for tickers that have some that the tough part is figuring out where the things. Finding a list of tickers that are traded is not hard. The tough part is figuring out where that company is headquartered, and then you know you work from there. So I guess you could attack this from a couple of different ways. I would say that scraping would be like, from the actual like creating the index is not very hard to do and not very hard to understand. It's more so like we need help in actually getting this data.
Like,
You know
kind
what
of
I mean?
something that we're looking for is, I know like Trevor and Eric, you guys were working on the Falling Knives this summer. And I remember you guys had a Python library with, I think it was like past 10 to 15 years of all of the price movements of the S&P 500, like the candlestick prices. And honestly, if we could somehow get something like that, that would be awesome.
So you would want something like that, but just for companies in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Exactly. I honestly think a better way to do it would be to like utilize like an API that pulls up all the data from stocks in Pennsylvania, rather, because like what we did for that program was we just had like a giant CSV file that contained everything, but we had to pre-download that. If you wanted to like use the code, you had to like send it to someone, that file, and like it'd be easier to just utilize an API. The only thing is, I haven't really tried using that yet. Or like I'm trying to like integrate that into the Falling Knives code with the Yahoo Finance subscription that Professor Zorro mentioned. So I think it'd be possible soon enough. But as of right now, I'm just like trying to get that all together.
Brian, I saw you nodding your head there.
Yeah, I'll give you guys 2 cents. I've done a little bit of this stuff. So you definitely don't want to have the CSV because it's a static file. You can't, it's not dynamic. So what happens when you take the snapshot, let's call the CSV a snapshot of today. It's not going to change over time. Also, as Eric mentioned, you don't want to have 7 CSV files to some, there's too many mistakes to be made. What you're definitely going to want to look at is the Yahoo API is good and all, but it has a limitation. I think a better way to do it, and as Jack mentioned, if you actively web scrape a website, you can condition on that website will probably have the location of that company. What you'll do, oh, Jordan, whatever that thing Jordan sent, take a look at that. If there is a, what you can probably do is you can just actively web scrape using Beautiful Soup, a website, and then you can condition on what stocks you scrape based on when you web scrape, it'll pull HTML code, and then you'll pull data from the HTML code into Python, into a dictionary, and then from a dictionary you can do whatever you want, right? So you can condition on each stock you look at whether or not that is headquartered in Pennsylvania or not, and just save data points that satisfy that condition.
Gotcha.
And it'll be and basically all you'll do is you'll run it and it'll dynamically update all the time. And as Professor Zorro said, you want to publish this somewhere or you pass on the baton to someone else, right? You don't have to mess with the data necessarily because it's all plugged into a certain source that's reliable. That's my 2 cents.
What I
Gotcha.
sent isn't anything perfect. I just Googled like stocks in PA because when you pull, like you said, it's static, it's not dynamic. So this won't be a perfect list, A, because it's small cap, and B, because I'm sure some of these companies have either been acquired or they have parent companies in different locations. It's just the idea, whatever data provider you can provide, usually if you create a data frame, they will have a section of headquarters because when every company releases their prospectus, like their 10Ks, they have to list where they're headquartered at. So I don't have experience with web scraping, but I know that there will be data providers that have the headquartered location relating to the stock.
Yahoo, for example, when you go on Yahoo Finance and you literally type in Google, it'll have like the beautiful charts and it'll have like the PE ratio and then the close open and all that stuff, volume. And then down somewhere on that web page, there'll be like headquarters somewhere, like whatever the address is in California, right? And basically, if you loop through all the possible, if you loop through that list that Jordan just sent, right, then you'll see, and then you check whether or not, and it's in PA, as Jordan said, some of these might be acquired or not. Once that occurs, then you can just pull the data that you need. That's kind of how I would approach it from a web scraping standpoint. Instead of the API is also possible.
Yeah, I think that list, like we definitely would have to confirm if that's like a complete and like up-to-date list. And then once you do that, like that part remains static, but then you can just like web scrape for those names, I suppose. But I haven't done web scraping. I think Eric knows a little bit about it. But I think he learned about it in his like Fin 377 class, something like that. But yeah, I haven't had experience with that yet myself.
What I can do, I could give you access to some courses in
Data camp.
Data camp.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe
Any sort of info you got would be helpful.
That's a good starting point, I would say.
Data scraping and okay, gotcha.
And we
So
could be
I have a
using the
quick question.
Bloomberg account too.
Well, Brian, how would you describe the Bloomberg API?
I'm gonna digress to Jordan here.
Or Jordan.
What?
How would you describe the Bloomberg API?
Oh my God! Don't go.
And don't be vulgar. Don't be vulgar.
Don't go near it. It's basic. Long story short, they created a back and API recently where you can pull all that information, but there's no like technical assistance on it. So there's like a 500-page development guide on how to use it, but there's nobody you can call at Bloomberg and ask for help. So you're kind of on your own with it.
Gotcha.
Unless you have loads of cash, unless you have loads of cash like the banks do.
At the same time, you can do it on the front end. You won't be able to actually code it, but you will probably be able to look up on the terminal, like all publicly traded companies in PA, and then potentially download it into a CSV. But like, that's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Alternatively, though, you could do that. You could have just an Excel file that does that, that's tied into Bloomberg and pull from that, right? Because that would be dynamic.
If you did it essentially every day, every month, every period, yes.
It's dynamic to the Excel, but Excel into Python has to be a CSV or a reader, which is dangerous.
Wait, sorry. I like have experience web scraping with Yahoo Finance. Like I know how to do that, but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of all I've worked with, so I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Very helpful. That's a good start. I'm not in this project. I'm just chiming in because they keep asking about coding questions.
Wait,
But
so
yeah,
can I ask, like,
that's definitely a good start.
who else is in this project? Just like
Right now,
It's me, Mike, and Ramos.
Yeah.
That's it from our end.
and what are
But,
your guys' roles in this?
We're trying to figure that out as it goes on it. Like, I think part of it is like we're trying to generate the idea of what we're trying to present, and I think what we're there's no like good answer at this point because this project is kind of still in its infancy right now. I mean, Mike, do you have a better way to articulate this than me?
I mean, so essentially what we're trying to do is to figure out what really the best way is. Sorry, my phone's ringing, but what the best way is to actually divvy up the index itself. So do we want to look at older firms that were in the last 50 or 6 years? Because we were thinking about maybe doing like a young versus old S&P 500 index. That's something that Nair suggested. Or are we doing an all PA stock market index? And then from there, we kind of want to think about what are ways that this can be used. So I know Jack mentioned the political standpoint, and then we kind of want to do like what is actually driving these major indexes. Sorry for the voicemail being left. I know that's annoying, but.
All right.
Well, good. And like, do you guys have coding experience or no?
I have minimal, but I mean, I've been taking data camp courses by the day, trying to touch up on it.
You count Excel VBA? Because I got that. Now I'm willing to learn. I've been taking some of these data camp courses in Python. I'm new to it, but I definitely have an understanding of coding logic, if you will, just not necessarily knowing a ton of libraries or different things like that. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just wanted to get like that information across.
I think VBA counts. It's something,
Yeah, that's what I would say I'm comfortable with right now. But like we were saying, we're willing to learn. And honestly, like if you're in Mike or my or Ramo's shoes, like we need to be learning, we need to be learning Python or C++ or these other languages, and doing these projects are a great opportunity to do that. We just need to actually do something with it to learn it. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. So anyway, I have all your guys' names. I'll send you guys an email. Hopefully we can find a time to meet this week and we can discuss this in more detail. Ramos also has a pretty good idea. Has some idea of what to do as well. So we definitely should have him looped in on this, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think we're just going to touch base with Ramos, see what's going on. And then I might also reach out to Nair and see if I could schedule something with him, just to kind of create more of a generalized plan, because I know we're saying a lot right now. And don't
Well,
really...
what we'll do, Mike, is we'll have a meeting with for Sanaya in a month from now, he's not gonna be the one that, you know, basically you're gonna have to tell him this is where we are, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, like we're doing with all the other sponsors, right? And then I'll say, okay, yeah or nay. Okay, do you need help from me? But we rather that you drive this thing as much
Okay,
as
yeah, not a problem.
you just if you need help for project, because there's no way, you know.
I just kind of have a question for like our team, like you know, Eric, Catherine, Professor Zorro, and like Ramos. Like, so should we sort of like shift our focus more to trying to work on this project, or
It's up to you guys. It's up to you guys. I want to make sure it's an exciting project, and somehow I feel that something like that could be, because now you're interacting with different people and you're kind of learning new things, because at the end of the day, you know, we don't really care about the index. What we really care about is you interacting with a bunch of new people, and then it forces you to learn more things along the way, because all these guys that you're seeing and gal around, when they're working on a project, I mean, Jordan and Brian could tell you, you know, they say, well, you know, it's like the reach goes beyond your grasp, and they need to, you know, you need to read some books, and that's when you know you're on the right direction, where you're like reaching out where you don't know what's going on. That's what you want. And maybe that's could be the one with this one, with the index.
Gotcha. Yeah, this definitely seems like a good learning opportunity.
Yeah, plus you put your name on the map, there's something relevant. We got some, because the problem with that we're having with the Falling Knives is that we don't really have a corporate sponsor. Right?
So this project's got like a corporate sponsor?
But yeah, we have Nandu, Professor Naya, which is the chair of the College of Business. He says that would be great, right? So
right.
If we need some help, if we need some resources, I don't know, then it's a lot easier to get things moving that way.
Yeah, I think what I would probably petition is that we kind of would shift our focus more towards
Yeah, we'll
this
talk to
project.
Ramos when he gets back or whatever. Let's see what he thinks about it. But I think so.
Yeah, I think we could definitely talk about it on a Monday. Just kind of talk
Yeah.
about like some details.
And I want you guys to talk to each other and exchange idea. This is what it's supposed to. This is what's supposed to happen. That's the idea.
Got it.
Jack, Mike, anything else to say?
That's all I got. I'm sending them an email right now.
Okay. Something came back in the conversation. Jordan, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to send an email out to Professor Naya and all, and you know, when it's all API with Bloomberg, and I want to put in my guy. He's an IAC member also from Bloomberg. I want to CC him on it because he's supposed to take care of the relationship with Lehigh as well, and he's a data analyst. And I'm going to ask you to tell him, you know, what your experience has been on something like that.
Okay, yeah, well, it would be helpful because I talked to someone. I contacted the Bloomberg help desk. I talked to him. Talked to his boss, and he basically ran through like some little things. But he, at the end of the day, told me like they don't have a team that works with this.
Yeah, Mike Liebman, that's his name. Okay, I'll shoot out an email on that.
That'd be great.
And having said all this, we're waiting for Zane and Elizabeth, maybe, from Ethereum. You guys could stay at Catherine and company, right? Just if you have nothing else to do, hang around. It should be interesting stuff anyway.
Well, I think I'm going to take a quick break.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I may
sure.
come
You
back
don't have to
after
stay.
that.
Whatever.
We'll see. We'll see.
Hey, we are waiting, and he said he was coming. By the way, regarding Ed this morning, he said he didn't have it on his calendar, and I realized that I put it on LinkedIn, but I didn't send him an invite, and that was the issue. So I'm trying to reschedule it for November 20th. I will let you know if it's confirmed. Vatsala, get ready. Brian, Steven, here we go. Steven, how you doing? Hi.
I'm doing great, thanks.
Like your backgrounds, very exciting. We have to work on the background at some point, but
Yeah, if there is an important event, I would change my
yeah,
computer.
we'll see. Let me think about something.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm experimenting myself. Brian, anyone else? Sal, Misal, you there, right?
Yeah.
And Professor, I couldn't access the course on data camp recently.
I
was
know,
wondering-
and that's not. Yeah, I'm working on that because my my academic and Marcella brought that to me as well. Academic registration ended in October 20th, and I've been contacting them to extend it so we could have access to all these courses as a block. And Jack and Andrew, you should get an invite as well.
Okay, great.
It's an invite where basically you go into data camp and you got a bunch of courses you could pick from
Got it.
without having to register, like we just talked about data scraping. And Catherine also put you in as well. Pick some of those courses. I mean, the stuff is available, and they want to give it to students because eventually you're going to work and then it expands their reach. So there's no reason for you to pay for anything, quite frankly.
Got it.
Now, let me just stay for a second. If it should be any minute now. When Zane shows up, Stephen, take the lead and tell him a little bit what you've been up. Oh, here we go. Zane.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. See this?
Oh, there we go.
You started this.
I know, right?
You started this. So without being too facetious, you what are you doing?
What am I doing? Building a lot of interesting technology.
Okay. You
So,
on your own or you went somewhere else? Or?
I'm on my own.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. So started an LLC, and so now I'm just like applying for grants. I got one grant so far, and then talking to different people about like sort of different projects that they're interested in building, and then going from there to see if like those things like intersect.
Oh, hold on. Maybe you guys. I don't think you got the entire class here, almost. I mean, not for that. Maybe you could give. Where did you study, and where do you work? And let's give these guys who you are.
Okay, so my name is Zane Starr. Originally, I went to school for electrical and computer engineering at CMU. Was really doing some deep nerd stuff there, and then of course I took a job in fintech.
What did you? I'm sorry, chemical engineer or financial engineer?
Electrical and computer.
Oh, electrical engineering. Okay.
Yep.
So at Carnegie Mellon, very good.
Yep.
Great.
I took a job in fintech. So I was working for a company called FactSet. And I worked in a team called Style, Performance, and Risk. So like basically doing sort of benchmark analysis, efficient frontier type of things. But mostly like kind of charts and graphs for more like investment analysts. I started studying for my CFAs, passed level 1, took level 2, didn't pass it. The market crashed. And I was kind of like, well, what am I like actually more passionate about? And so I was just like more into the software side of that like spectrum and just like building interesting technology. So I threw myself more heavily into startups. I left FactSet and sort of the fintech world, and worked for a company called Hyperpublic. I was like the 4th engineer or the 5th engineer. And then I just like built out this tech stack to do a lot of crazy things. We're working on building a canonical reference of all the places that are physical, but like lining those things up with the virtual. So if like McDonald's is on 123 Main Street, but someone else says it's on 123 South Street, which one is the place? Who has the accurate results? And then how do you take all of this data online? How do you clean it? How do you make sense of it? And then how do you turn that into dollars? So I jammed on that for like a year. We got acquired by Groupon. They brought the technology. I took that, scaled it for Groupon to drive their like sales organization. So we basically were using that sort of like data and the clean data set to build models on what the sales representatives should run as the next deal. And so there's all kinds of like interesting information on like hyperlocality and things like that with regards to like what times you run a deal, how many nail salons you should do in a day, how do you interact with the behavioral economics of the sales agents who want to do just like deals that like sell, but may not be the best for the long-term target of the organization. And how do you like make these like incentive structures? So I left Groupon after a couple of years, and then I moved to a company called Gingerlabs, which was like the #1 grossing note-taking app on iPad. And so they wanted me to build out some cloud infrastructure. So they could do like more real-time Google Docs style collaboration. I worked on that for a while. Then I switched to a company called NOMS, which is kind of like, or Attic Labs, which is like this company that was focused on decentralized data back in 2015, 2014, something like that. So they wanted to be like get for data. So that's kind of like the journey where I like officially kind of started to sticking my toes into decentralized technology. So at Gingerlabs, I was doing a little bit of that as well. But at NOMS, I was really doing that. And then I left NOMS, did my own sort of like consulting thing. And then a friend of mine started working at Consensus. I actually was in Consensus Academy. We were bouncing about like where to go next. Is it AR? Is it VR? Should I go into machine learning more heavily? Should I go into AI? And so we're like, oh, blockchain. Blockchain seems cool. Ticks a lot of the boxes. And so kind of jumped in from there. And then I ended up working at Consensus and working on decentralized science fiction, because at that time, money was flying high and whatever kind of moonshot idea, you can do that. And so at Consensus, we were trying to come up with like models and like token economic models to incentivize people to give up IP. So you have a story you want to tell, don't go and license it for only you. You should like sort of come up with a sub-licensing model. So basically we're trying to figure out what are the incentive structures that will allow people to like give up their IP rights and share them with other people. Very idealistic, but like that kind of thing. So I spent the next year kind of going to Comic-Con and all kinds of science fiction conventions, talking to writers and like various people to try and gauge like what it would take for them to basically allow fans to write fan fictions and derivative works, and then for us to build a system to attribute those fans' derivative works, so that way the original like author would still get paid, kind of like they do in movies, where like after so many years or so many like sequels or prequels, you no longer get paid, or you get paid less for those like eventual derivative works. So I did that for a year, and then like sort of the market crashed.
Wait,
so I've been through a lot of market.
How old
crashes.
are you? I mean, geez, I mean, it's like 10 jobs already.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm 30, getting ready to turn 36.
Okay.
So I've been
You
around
know,
the block
but
for a
you know,
while.
when you were at Consensus, did you know Pai Chen?
No.
Ichen. She was there for a while. She's a graduate of the program, believe it or not.
Oh, cool.
She was at Consensus she was director of strategic initiatives. And then now she's at Digital Asset. So she graduated there. Okay, and then what?
Yeah, so
Jeez, this is interesting
yeah,
stuff.
after Consensus, so there's also some other stuff. I was dabbling with open source projects, so like there's a lot of those things like protocol labs and stuff like that. So I was playing around a lot with IPFS and doing some contributions. So did Consensus, really cool. Gonna take over the world, build a world computer, change that to being something more financially based. It's cool. Saw a lot of interesting things, met a lot of cool people. After that, it took some time, just started sort of spiking out or going full node, as we call it, former Consensus people. So I did that, and then ETC Labs reached out to me and was like, hey, look, we already have this tooling group, and this is what we're doing. Kind of do whatever you want in this kind of regards. So I joined Labs initially to do some like infrastructure and like software stuff, but then ended up really just kind of focusing on partnerships and figuring out ways that ETC could like channel growth through various partnerships and people to like sort of expand the dev team, because the dev team is too small to do a lot of dev work. So did that.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of different interesting people, tried to budge the needle in certain directions. Yeah, and then
And now you're starting.
now I'm independent. I went full node again.
Listen. I mean, I've got a bunch of new people joining the program. I've got Jack is joining, and Andrew, and probably four more others in the spring. You know, if there's anything that I don't know what you come up with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could put a projects around and we could work with you as a capstone or whatever. I mean, you're doing some nifty stuff. And next Friday, let me know if you have time. You're free in the afternoon between between 2 and 4. I'm having an industry advisory council for the program. I would love for you to, you know, be on it or listen in, and because we're looking for direction as to what's out there, what's going on, blockchain, blah blah blah.
It's really an exciting world, especially.
I know it's moving, and I'm trying to get that to the students to make sure that they are well prepared. You know, they're doing lots of interesting stuff, but you out there right now.
Yeah, I'm now like fully immersed in the fringe of everything.
Great.
I have so much more time, and then like
all right, maybe we could spend
maybe
we could talk a little bit, Stephen and Brian.
Yeah.
Back to reality a little bit, and
yeah,
take you guys away from it. Stephen?
So this week I'm preparing for the presentation for next week. The ISE, what? I don't know what's the conference name, but
The
I'm preparing.
Industry Advisory Council. I think that's would be great if Zane is there, because we'll be presenting that project, Zane, to a bunch of executive asset managers, bankers. I have about 10 of them on that group. So
yeah, I'm preparing for the presentation slides, and also I was working on the model to get some results so that I can present on the conference, and that's basically what I did these 2 weeks.
Can we take a peek at it yet, or do you have a peek of the presentation or not?
This thing is not even close to being ready.
Okay.
This is just literally rough draft ideas and starting to formulate things into how they should be.
So maybe you
Yeah,
could share how you going with it, maybe if what Zane is thinking about it. I mean, what do you want to?
So
do? What do you
my
want to
part, I'm focusing on the model. I'm doing it, and I'm going to describe some, but the presentation slides is not in this computer, so I can
that's
share.
fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but I've already finished that slide, so I can present it anytime.
Brian and Marcella, what's going on your side?
Sorry, just plugging my computer in. But,
Okay.
All right. Hi Zane. How are
Marcella.
you? That was a really great and interesting background. I don't think we didn't get that context as well.
I did not realize that Zane was
old as shit.
He was like, well, in this environment, it's probably old. By the time you get to it, it's too late. It's gone. So
yeah. So where I
I'm
am,
impressed.
I'll just start off with a bit of a background, obviously, just to give it context to where I am right now. So my main interest on it was on looking at the cryptocurrencies as an asset, an alternative asset. Interesting, right? So what I did was I ended up being able to actually explore certain algorithms that could actually be implemented on the cryptocurrency that I talked to. So I was been able to run some algorithm. This is just a back test, honestly, with just 5 years of data to be like, all right, if Zane at the beginning of 2016 would have been having an algorithm running, which of the currently applicable machine learning algorithms would have actually been able to make him a good return, right? So I had a buy and hold, a simple buy and hold. If Zane were like, I bought Bitcoin 2016 and been holding it, and then I compared these to other rebalancing sort of algorithms, right? You have a constant rebalance algorithms. You have these other non-parametric algorithms as well, just to see which one would best perform. So I was really happy with myself, and I thought, wow, okay, this is something. And then I had a chat with one of the guys called Nick, and then he gave me another context on it. I guess it's part of the learning process. He made me understand that there's also a price impact issue that I should be taking into consideration, because you can't necessarily draw the same parallels into cryptocurrencies as you would in equities. So what I've been doing currently is just trying to read up more on price impact and see whether or not I could be able to, in addition to this sort of preliminary sort of look, be able to put that into say probably get a price impact function of price impact function when you're trading in these currencies, right? So that would probably be a simple thing as like doing a simple VWAP metric, and then using that to probably see whether or not what impact each single price movement would be. So this is pretty much where I've been currently. In terms of implementation, I had those algorithms, put them in, saw what they could do. Another caveat of this is it was looking at what I was doing was looking at cryptos as a portfolio. So if at the beginning of 2016, you as Zane said, I only have within my basket of universe of portfolios, these cryptocurrencies, right? That's one caveat I didn't put in when I started talking. So you're not necessarily picking a single stock like you would in, say, a Markowitz portfolio, where you have a single time batch sort of allocation, and then that's it. This was exploring a sequential decision base that was actually saying, as each window goes through, like your rebalancing window goes through, how could I rebalance my portfolio? That's what the algorithms were doing. How could I then rebalance my portfolio going forward such that I yield maximum return? So that's pretty much where, it's a bit of a long run, but that's pretty much where I have been, with a lot of, I must say, rabbit holes here and there, as is customary with blockchain. But I guess it's a learning process, and we're helpful for any hand you and Professor Zora have been handing to. So that's pretty much where I could say I've been in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting, and like the price impact function seems like an interesting thought, because like definitely you could see whales in the market shifting the price quite dramatically.
Yes.
And like one of the things I just linked was about this Harvest flash loan attack, which is basically kind of, it's not really an attack. It's like predictable arbitrage.
Not familiar with it.
Because like the pricing function that they were using did not really take into effect price impact in the sense that this one sort of whale took out a flash loan, which I think we've talked about briefly, where you can basically get a chunk of money, do a bunch of stuff, return the chunk of money, all in a single set of transactions. So like the only cost to you as the user is just like what your mind can think of, and the cost of the gas if it doesn't work out, which is like incredibly crazy. So I think the attacker took tens of millions, just like exploiting price impact to like manipulate the like price of various DeFi like pools. So it's kind of just like an interesting thing, but like price impact being a material thing for cryptocurrencies, whereas like for equities that like may not have as strong of a tie-in, I would imagine.
I wasn't even aware of this up until this week, that it was actually something of significance within the space. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
So I guess I'll chime in here. Before I continue, the kind of what all this looks like in the future is creating an importable library. And we had talked about this at the beginning. I don't have personally a lot of experience doing that, but Mozilla was kind enough to provide a beginning door to exploring how to build the library, the analytics library, and get that out. So that's kind of what, once all these individual models and all this stuff works on a local, try to extrapolate it into a library that we can just kind of mass open source share on a GitHub kind of situation. Personally, so what I've been doing is taking an alternative, I wouldn't call it alternative, but kind of a different route to modeling returns of tokens. So specifically, I took Chainlink as kind of my test subject per se. And Zane and I, we kind of talked about this, but using transaction data to model how the movements of a token, so the smart contract transaction data affects the underlying price in the market of that token. So not to get into the granulars, but essentially I have the data set that I want to use that's been scraped from BigQuery. It's cleaned, it makes sense, it's good to go, it's per dates. I can translate it into per month if I want to. So the modeling is kind of the part. We can do a simple OLS and kind of check off the boxes and call it a day. But I think that's, and it's similar to the similar issues with this as we have with the factor stuff. Time series data is ugly, and we're gonna have to account for stationarity. And it's never going to be perfect on the first time. So I think, so right now I have a basic y equals beta, beta naught plus the sum of the beta i's xi's, right? Very simple model. That's good to go and it works. Obviously none of us are ever going to be content with that. The next step is to adjust for stationarity and get that looking good. And if there's a way to kind of adjust stationarity over time, across different tokens, that would be extremely helpful in terms of getting that into the library, into the importable library, and then getting it out. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I think as we've been talking, kind of thoughts, getting that data cleaned and efficient was the biggest headache I think throughout this whole process.
Especially because there's a lot going on there, and then the way that the actual transactions in the data set, like what people are doing for them, are probably like just different. Like no one was really thinking, I'm going to wrap 5 transactions in a single transaction. And then on top of that, I'm going to Flash loan, like you literally have flash loans in your data, which is kind of crazy. I'm going to take 100,000 ETH or wrapped ETH and then do a bunch of stuff and then return it. Which is like, it's a weird behavior to see in the data.
You'll be glad to know that once we have that transaction set, and for example, so I personally pulled out volume per day, right, and count of transactors. If you want to, for example, model volume and just the amount of sender or the amount of senders receivers, or you want to say, I want to use a particular address that I know is the most active on that token, you could also do that. So it's super malleable. Because once it's in a data frame, you do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
But getting it into that data frame per day is the problem.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at, and by next week. So for the presentation that's coming up next week, just gonna present the OLS in the context that it needs to be adjusted for and have the stationary aspect addressed. I know that going in. It's just, I guess the important takeaway there is that we have blockchain data ready to go and ready to be modeled. That's the big takeaway.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm like, I'm excited to like play around with it.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely, I mean, I know there's definitely Marcella's machine learning stuff and then Steven's trading algorithm on top of that, but you have data, you can do whatever you want with it. So that's kind of where we're at.
Nice. Okay. So
I passed the baton to Professor Zora, I guess.
Yes, Zane, a question for you. Your email is still over at because I'm trying to send you an invite and ETC still shows up. Is that the right one?
I'm sure I probably still have access to everything. But
okay, I want to make sure. Let me send you the invite for November 6th.
I say that one is the best email to use.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Also, you all are welcome to shoot me emails through that as well.
That makes total sense to me. Oh, yeah, let me add you as a guest for next week. But you should be getting a great.
Yeah.
Wow, lots of stuff going on here.
Yep, got it.
Okay, fantastic. So they'll be presenting. You could come anytime you want between 2 and 4 to get a better feel for what's going on. These guys, I think maybe around 3:30, Brian, you guys show up and start for the presentations. And then, you know, whoever wants to stay. I mean, we got a bunch of people. Okay. Bye, Brian. Talk to you. Zane, thank you very much for your time, as usual.
Hey, no problem.
Don't work too hard, I guess.
I won't. I'll try not to. All right. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
We're waiting now for John. Oh,
actually, John's here.
John's here.
So
sorry, I'm not
so the older I get, the less and less I want to hear that, you know, the late John Engelson.
Okay, so my Ben Yerin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm on campus this time.
Okay, you're, that's why you have the where is Yerin? She's
here.
Oh, here she is.
Here.
Okay, guys.
Yeah, so we had a good call with Scott last week. And I think some of the things we really talked about were more the qualitative aspects to the fund and to the project. I mean, you can kind of fill us in on how, if you had any discussions at the board meeting. But in terms of our conversation with Scott, the thing he emphasized to us first was sort of how unique these projects that they work on are with respect to the like land remediation costs and a lot of those things. And I think the things that we took away from the meeting were really the aspects that we could sell to a fund investor, such as like the what do I have written down? PA
Well,
has
just
good.
can I back up to just the one comment? So he's correct, and I think I prepped you for that. And so that we're all on the same page, including Scott, because sometimes Scott's not used to doing this kind of thing. So Scott understands that we are trying in the, forget the land remediation. I mean, we do that on a regular basis. And once it's remediated, we generally don't develop it. So this really starts at that point from a starting standpoint and says, whoop, are you guys still there?
Yeah, we're here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're here.
So for some reason, I don't know why it's flipped to you guys weren't there. So he's explaining, typical for an engineer, exactly everything that he's on his mind. But what he's not understanding is once the land's remediated, these shell buildings need to be done like flapjacks. I mean, the investments are standardizable. How we're going to start, again, setting the acquisition and remediation side costs aside. So even though we're going to do that with the funds, putting up the shell buildings and all the rest of it becomes kind of cookie cutter. It's very flapjack. We're making pancakes. So just understand that what he's saying is technically correct, but when it comes to what our business model is, it starts throwing people that are trying to prepare, which is what you all are trying to do, an adequate business model and a presentation model. It starts screwing up preparing that. So I'm not telling you not to listen to what he's saying, but when he says stuff like that, if that causes you to say, well, okay, this is something I'm not hearing from John, you need to get a hold of me. Because everybody else, including Scott, does understand that everything else is real. We're trying to standardize, and the more we can standardize it, the less then the investment profile becomes specific to any given project. So we are trying to create. In fact, I just got sent an article on opportunity zones, and it was basically questioning the wisdom of them, way back when they created them, and the problem that everybody has with opportunity zones. They're trying to do exactly, and they're trying to handle the opportunity zones exactly as all the economic developers had done this in the future. Each project is a specific project, as opposed to saying, let's develop this cookie cutter approach where we can put these shell buildings up and we just really have to recruit for it. So please understand that. Anyway, I interrupted you, but I wanted to make sure that we all understood that the business model for doing the shell buildings and the costs of those shell buildings is very standard.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think just if the funds are going to be used to do all the land remediation costs, whatever they might be, the fact that we don't know those becomes almost a liability for the investor.
Well, understand that we have a general idea. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with what you're saying. Okay. So, and as I said, and I've been, again, I mean, I've been kind of saying the same stuff, but as you dig into stuff, now all of a sudden it makes sense to you. The land remediation costs are to some degree controllable by us, and the variability of those land remediation costs, I mean, we can come up with a range for that. So if we particularly, so we can basically look at from top to bottom desirable land, and projects to not so desirable land and projects, right? Because we can control which ones we do when. And we have a pretty good estimate of what the remediation cost is going to be in advance of us going in. And the reason that we can have that is twofold. Number one, we know what they made there. And we have, and so we kind of can get our arms around that. Number two, we've been doing this a long time. And so, there's certain abilities. And on top of that, and I don't know if Scott explained this to you, we do get a lot of funding from the state to remediate those properties. So, so if the state was not interested in having that remediated, then we would not do the project. So when we're talking about risk to the investor, it's really not a risk to the investor. We wouldn't do the project because we are part of that investment side, right? We're not going to take a risk ourselves on something, that is risky. So we're not trying to set off through the investors, laying those risks off on them. We're essentially a participant because it makes a difference to us what projects we do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to help you assess, because to me, risk and return is huge in this project. So you have to understand it. And again, this is not where AEDC has been as an organization. So I'm trying to help them understand that they too need to kind of shift their gears. Because in the old days, they got an unbelievable amount of funding to go in and pretty much pick anything they wanted to and remediate it. They couldn't do it frequently, but they would do project by project, based on the criteria as set forth, by, like, say, the leadership in Allentown, not the not-for-profit leadership, but the community leadership. And that's really not been the case because the community leadership isn't paying anymore. So these kinds of issues, as you have, instead of waiting for 2 weeks, like, get me on the phone and say, hey, John, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, this does or doesn't, I think this affects us. So otherwise we're going to slow up our progress. So I don't see this as anything, as an issue or a problem.
No, I don't either. I just, I think Scott was a little bit more focused on sort of the qualitative things, like I mentioned, like the brownstone reclamation, like a lot of those aspects that you can really sell that are sexy in the pitch book, So I think that's what we talked about a lot. And then just so on your point, just as a question, where does AEDC's funding come from? Is it public or private?
It's primarily public at this point. Okay. Now that's kind of why my advocacy is to go on the private side, because the things that they're able to do are restricted by the amount of money that they can beg for. And that's kind of why I picked on the opportunity zone opportunity. And I was actually talking about doing this before the opportunity zones existed. And I think the business model, as I've mentioned to all of you, works whether or not the opportunity zones and the tax code exists. Because there's a huge demand for these kind of things. I actually, speculate that as we come to the end of the, whatever you want to call it, pandemic, that we're going to start seeing a lot more smaller manufacturing located throughout, because it kind of, if you look at the dictum of supply chain, it kind of aligns with that, along with the technological advances that we've made, where you don't have to build a huge plant to get tremendous economies of scale and individual pieces. In fact, you're starting to see a lot more the kind of mass customization, which we were talking about, frankly, when I was in graduate school, which was before Moby Dick was a guppy. So it's finally coming to being because of how you can do the rules-based manufacturing.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, having a smaller footprint, having a much more efficient factory, understanding how to use rules-based manufacturing and a higher level of technological manufacturing, you're able to do some very interesting things. In fact, I don't know, I know Professor Zora knows this, but I actually work with the Enterprise Systems Center, the Industrial Engineering Group, and we're looking at some of those projects as well. So, in fact, I've told them that at some point in time, we should talk, once we get our program running, we should talk with them about helping some of the manufacturers that we would recruit, to come into our QOZs, to help them with some of the industrial engineering projects as a good experience for both those companies, cost effectively, and for the Lehigh students. So,
yep, definitely. Scott also mentioned there might be some existing QOZ funds in PA or in the local area. I did a little bit of searching around and I couldn't find much, even though I kind of remember seeing something. I don't know if you had any knowledge on other funds that are already in existence.
There are some, but don't let that confuse you. They're not I think there's a project on the south side of Bethlehem, and I've heard of another project, but that's specific to a particular. So it's not a general fund; it's a fund that was raised to do something specific, a specific project.
Okay.
So again, it's not our model, but you know, sometimes Scott's funny because he knows a lot and he contributes, but then it confuses the issue. That's why he has me around. I'm trying to be funny.
I know,
Obviously
I'm smiling.
not
You
to.
just can't see.
Well, I could kind of see your eyes squinch up, so I don't know whether it's pain or laughter. But
Ben, are you on campus? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm just in steps. The library is too busy.
Really?
Well, not really. It's quieter here. Mike and Yuran, you have anything?
Hi. I want to know, like, we talked about the umbrella structure. So from like now, like, do you see we should put these individual projects into one pool or separate under one umbrella, or?
well, so you tell me, okay? So you're me, and you know you're trying to essentially appeal to investors, and you have a fairly vanilla model. So do you want to identify each thing as a separate project, or do you want to raise money on the basis of, I mean, you could, I mean, there's some, are you guys familiar with SPACs? Trying to remember what the acronym, SPAC, specialized, oh geez.
Special purpose acquisition.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Exactly. So you are familiar with them, but yeah, so a SPAC, I mean, we might set it up that way, but I kind of doubt it. I would rather create a pool of money and say, here's what we're going to, invest. The SPAC would allow the investor to put the money in and decide, after the fact to do that. So that's something that we haven't discussed. We all haven't discussed it. I happen to know about it, and I've had it in the back of my mind. So if you're in that's how I would rather set it up like a SPAC than set it up, and raising separate money each time we had another project. Because again, I mean, are you going to invest in the model? Because if you invest in the model, because if you believe in the model, you invest in the model. Your decision-making criteria to me are: do I believe as an investor? Number one, do I want to take this risk in general? Do I believe that this part of the world, specifically America, is a good risk, and do I believe in the QOZ tax advantage model, and do I understand what these guys are trying to do, and am I behind it? Am I willing to put my money where my mouth is? I think it's an easier decision, and therefore you can diversify your risk, because we're not just doing one particular building project, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the whole concept of QOZs hasn't been as widely accepted, because you have to go through everything you're going through for a particular project. So then you have to do that each time you want to do a project. The projects have to be larger, whereas our projects, are designed to be smaller. We're only building, 25, 50,000 square foot buildings, that kind of thing. Hopefully that answers your question. But so, I mean, if you think that we should, tell me, but I really I've never seen it that way, because I think we start becoming like everybody else, and we're looking more like what we're used to doing.
I did a little bit of reading on what structures nonprofits can use to maintain their 501(c)(3) status.
Yes.
And it looks like it has to be an LLC where the nonprofit is the GP, and then that's just from the IRS like basic tax code. That's all I pretty much know, but I haven't looked at the SPAC stuff yet.
Well, I'm trying to remember, because it's been a while. Can the LLC own a C or an S? I think it's opposite. I think a C can own an S and an LLC, but I don't think an LLC can. But I'm not sure of that. It's one thing I haven't checked in a while.
Okay, and as Scott mentioned, their tax people we'll look into it. But
yeah,
that's just
I
something.
mean, I've asked him to do that, so hopefully he's asked them all that already, but I haven't talked with him about that yet. But yeah, I mean, do you see a problem? I mean, so you say we can set it up as an LLC. I mean, we can not-for-profit can do it as an LLC. Do you see a problem with that and creating the umbrella? So we can create the LLC, and each project we can push the money into as a separate project. I mean, I don't think that's a big problem because an LLC can own other things.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue. I think the main thing is that the nonprofit, or the GP in this case, would have to sort of be the fund like manager essentially. So it's like finding investors that are willing to ride on that train as sort of like a subordinated, you know, whatever it may be. But other than that, I think it's fine in terms of a like a tax issue. It'd be fine. And Scott shared that sentiment.
Does the when you did that research, does the LLC have to be a majority owned by the not-for-profit?
I'm not sure if it said majority owned. It basically just had to be. They had to have control of the joint venture, I think is the way it was written.
Yeah.
So maybe that is majority.
Right. So that's kind of what that was. Number one, I wouldn't do it where we weren't in control of the joint, whatever the entity was. I mean, I would certainly make sure that we have 51%. I don't know how we could do some of the things we would need to do. And I think that's why it says it that way. So, I mean, I would want to do it because we would need the control. I'm sure that the reason it's written in the code that way is because that way the not-for-profit isn't co-opted and taken down a path that it's unaware of, and then later on says, well, we were just, throws up their hands and says we were just making an investment. I mean, the reason you're a not-for-profit is because instead of having shareholders, you're taking the profits and pushing it towards the reason that you got the not-for-profit status to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's to me kind of a conflict not to do and honor that structure.
Yep. Totally,
by the way,
totally
there's a real good, I think I told you all this before, but if I didn't, forgive me. If you want to see a very interesting not-for-profit, Citizens Energy, it's in the Boston area. Very interesting 501c3. Fascinating 501c3, as a matter of fact. One of the earliest 501c3s set up in the country. So,
Michael,
did that answer? Did I address your question? I mean,
Yeah, sure. Because I was just recalling like the last meeting with Scott and Jim. I remember that they had to check with the legal to see what they can do in this case. I don't think it's a definitive answer for them, like for AEDC to be a general partner. But yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. Their assignment was to make sure that how we structured it, that they checked. So I think we're far enough along that I'll make sure that they get an opinion from legal. They didn't want to spend the money on legal until we were a little bit more certain about some of the things that you all were going to recommend. And now that I think we're kind of certain, I'll make sure that we get an opinion from our attorneys. But at least so far, from what Dan said, it's the same approach that I would take anyway, that we would be in control. So that's very good news. It's encouraging. At least kind of shows you that I'm not insane, and that's always a good thing.
Hey, John, last time we spoke, you said you were about to have a meeting with the board. Did that actually happen, or?
Yeah, we had, yes, I said that we were having a strategy session. And so we're retooling the strategy to be much more focused on, this urban sites, the shell buildings, all, what your project is. So yeah, they're fully behind that. Now that was our first meeting in a series of meetings. we're breaking off into subgroups. This has its own subgroup. Of course, I'm participating on that subgroup. But yes, this is obviously, to everybody on the board from a strategy standpoint, a huge project, and it's a huge, not only just a project, but it's a huge piece of our long-term strategy. So I had no doubt that it was going to be, but you could see that from the conversation and the way things were developing.
So what is our next step here with Ben, Michael, and How do you see it?
I'm gonna keep building out the pitch book. I think we have some good information.
Okay.
We have a case study that we can use.
Okay.
And then we also have whatever we don't have on sort of like our building or shell building costs. We have a little bit of info, but Scott said he can supplement that and also give us some more historical information on projects that we can throw in there. And then also some of the new things we talked about, like those more qualitative items that we can kind of throw in there to invite investors in. And I think that's what we'll be working on for the next few weeks.
Good. Well, Ben, one of the things I found, because I've known Scott for a long time, we are very different, but we get along very well. So what I try to do with Scott, because he's very reluctant about a very specific number, is I try to get it to give me a range. And then I try to, in that range, I try to say, well, what's typical? From your experience, what's typical in that range? And I note the range. And I think that would be very beneficial. So it's kind of a great methodology for you to drag things out of him that he's, because I don't know how many engineers you've ever worked with, but they're a funny group of people. So when called on to give a specific number, and scientists are the same way. When called on to give a specific number, they're very reluctant because there's a lot of depends. But I always talk about like ballparks and ranges, and help them, so it's like I say to them, hey, help me out. Are we talking about $1 million? Are we talking about $100,000? Are we talking $10 million? And so it starts helping them understand that, these ranges are important for us to size the kinds of things that we're doing. And he does respond well to that. He still kind of goes around, hell's half acre in order to tell you what his opinion is, and you just put up with that. But and again, I'm used to dealing with engineers. First of all, I did study it along with science, and in business I laugh because plus or minus 20% is close enough most of the time in business, as opposed to the engineers, they want to be plus or minus 5%, and at plus or minus 5%, the scientists blow stuff up. So each has their own tolerance for accuracy, and it's kind of funny in the discussions with them of how they look at that kind of thing. And Scott is very much an engineer.
Yeah, I definitely noticed the hesitation on his end, but
I mean, that's why. Listen, I'm not talking out of school. He and I've had this conversation. It's not disrespect. I'm not meaning disrespect. I'm trying to help you all understand. Well, how do you navigate this? Because when you start running companies and everything, I used to get this all the time. And the funny part was, because I was working for a chemical company at the time, I had my plants who are all engineers, and then I had the research and development center, which are all scientists. And I spoke both of their languages, along with pretty much all the different business, concepts of what I was supposed to be doing. So some of the skill of navigating great decision making is to understand how these other people think, why they think the way they think, and how to overcome the obstacles that they create because of how they look at things and how they express themselves. So it's a great opportunity for you all.
Well, as we talked about, John, and we'll talk about it next week, November 6th at the IAC, we want students also that become problem solvers and leaders, and because that's the strengths of Lehigh.
Yep.
At the end of the day, right? We're an engineering school technically, so we're out there building stuff. So we want to make sure that, with people like you, we get to. Okay, so how do you talk to people?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because even, you'll find yourselves, you may switch industries. So I left the chemical industry to get into telecommunications, and there's not two things that are, I shouldn't say this, but they are two very dissimilar industries. And one of the reasons I got into telecommunications was because the people I was getting into business with had some severe business problems, you know, and they were actually concerned. And I walked in and it was like, okay, I didn't know anything about telecommunications, but it's like I'm smart enough to figure it out, and I did. And you know, within about 3-4 months, we turned it around, and within a year, we did our first acquisition, which was going to be heard of when I walked in the door. They were laughing and they said, "We can't believe you haven't even been here a year and we're doing our first acquisition." But you know, I had great people to work with, and of course, I didn't have the prejudice in my head of saying, "Well, this is hard because this is how the industry does it." I came out of a totally different business and said, "Okay, yeah, fine, this looks just like this, and this is like this part of my business." And I used to tell them that the telecommunications business looked to me like the distribution, just the distribution piece of the chemical business. And they'd laugh, and I would use the same kind of basic math that I used for distribution dynamics, pretty much to decide, you know, well, where do we need to, you know, do our networks and look at debottlenecking flow and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's between plant operations and distribution. And they would just shake their heads. They're going, "How do you know so much about this?" I said, "I don't know anything about telecom." You know, but the basic dynamics are the same. I'm a problem solver. And that's kind of what Patrick is talking about is, you know, you think about things and how do you overcome these things? Sometimes it's not an advantage to be like a sheer scientist or a sheer engineer. You know, you have to be a little bit, what problem am I solving and how do I get around that? So,
Well, you know,
how about Michael and Michael? I mean, I know the rest of you guys. Do you have any questions? I mean, you know, is there anything? I know you're working, you know, along with Ben, and I think Urano asks really good questions. It makes me stop for a second and think, okay, you know, what is she saying? You know, I mean, I know what she's saying, but in other words, what is she saying? And, you know, what is she concerned about? You know, how do we do that? So how about the rest of you? Any questions, any concerns?
Yeah, my biggest concern after the conversation with Scott was kind of what Ben had already talked about, just the range that we're dealing with in terms of the risk for developing the land, and how that's going to factor into one umbrella kind of fund. And to just try and aggregate it. You spoke on it earlier, so that made it more clear. But
good.
I guess.
And you do see how I'm mitigating that risk, right? I'm basically saying, well, if I judge that that's going to be too expensive, I'm not going to do that project.
Exactly.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
Okay, it's a huge risk, but you know, like, and I could even look at the state. It's like, hey, this is a big problem for somebody. We're not buying it. If you want to kick in more money, we'll come back around and we'll consider it. So that's how I would even lay it off on the state and the Fed sometimes, because you want to put some more money up to get this, because we you know, we're not a benevolent organization. We're just a not-for-profit organization. And if I do the project the way you want me to do it, I won't make a profit.
Does that still apply if the problem arises mid development? You know what I mean? If it's something that we don't find ahead of time?
You know, it could. It could. I don't know that many times we've experienced that, frankly. You know, what it would mean. You know, what it would mean to me again as a problem solver. So number one, we as I said, we kind of know the history of the land. Now, let's say for some reason somebody did something that was absolutely illegal, was not documented anywhere, and you know, horrific. Well, for me, okay, we would have acquired the land, and I would basically go, stop, freeze. We're not going to do anything with this. We're going to go to the next piece of land that we acquired, and we're going to go develop that while we negotiate with the feds and the state guys for more money to fix this problem. That's probably a community problem. I mean, if we found something that nobody knew about, it's not our, I mean, it is our not immediate problem, but eventually it's everybody's problem. So they understand how we did what we did and why we did what we did, which is why they have this Lehigh Valley Land Recycling Initiative. And that's that organization that I said that Scott chairs, that, you know, so from your perspective, I understand, you know, why that could concern you, but I'm not that concerned about it from a pragmatic and historical standpoint. I mean, I've been sitting on AEDC's board for over 10 years, and I don't remember one time where everybody goes, "Oh my God," we've done a lot of this stuff. So we've got this horrific problem.
Hey, John, just a quick question. How approximately like how many potential sites are AEDC is looking at?
Sites or shell buildings. So
shell buildings, yeah.
As I recall, there's like on the preliminary. This is just on the preliminary list. There's at least 12 sites, and I've been trying to have them say, okay, let's have a couple lists. Let's have our top, 10. If you're going to have top 10, like identify 12 to start off with. So there's a bunch of sites that kind of fit the criteria. They're developing a top 10 list. On each of those sites, you can build multiple shell buildings. Anywhere from 4 on up. I would say the range is probably 3 because I know there's some 3s. Even though we could squeeze in 4, we probably should. So you got everybody looks at me and goes, "Well, John, I know you'd build 4, but we probably only should build 3." It's like fine, 3. So I would say 3 to 8. Depending on the site. There's some huge sites that I don't want to do. I think they're ideal sites, but I would like to make sure that we've got this program, well under our belt before we're doing bigger sites than that. We've got to figure out how to, to me, the complicated part is not finding the sites, acquiring the sites, and remediating the sites and building the shell buildings. It's actually recruiting the companies to occupy the shell buildings, so to create that pipeline.
I think you answered my concerns. I didn't realize that we had governmental funding to fall back on regarding that.
Yeah, actually, in fact, we use a lot of governmental funding. I'm concerned about. I'll tell you, it's kind of funny because you guys bring up good things. So I think you guys always look at me as the answer guy. So I have my own set of things that I get concerned about, and one of the things that I get concerned about is the ability of the government to continue to fund the rehabilitation of these old sites, in these areas. Now, having said that, I think eventually even the government realizes that sooner or later, from all kinds of perspectives, including public health and welfare perspective, is that these sites are going to have to be dealt with in some way or another. And what better thing to do than deal with them as you're trying to put those sites back into, an economic situation that kind of pays everybody back, right? Creates jobs, creates tax base, creates all these things to where their investment in that side of things ends up getting returned to them because, so they're actually acting as the catalyst or the stimulus. But yeah, I don't want to pretend that I'm not concerned about anything. Patrick, Professor Zorro, and I, he knows me well enough. That's I think about all these things. I don't let it stop me. I kind of say, okay, what would you do if? What would you do that? So I'm a pretty good planner. I've always got a plan. So yes, I kind of understand the dynamics, and I've been working in economic development since 1985, which is just like within 6 months of getting, moving back here. Because I was born here, but I, grew up elsewhere, and I went to Lehigh, and I left, and so I came back in '85, and within 6 months of being back here, I was involved in economic development. So it's kind of my avocation. It's the way I give back to the community. So for all of you that think that, all the baby boomers that we just, we just took everything and we didn't give back. My father taught me that you have to give back, to your community and do things that you're actually good at. So I picked economic development because at least I understood it. Everything else I'm not so good at. Professor Zorro, can you go off mute for a second while they're thinking if they want to get done with me? So next Friday starts at 2:00, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. If I have any questions about access or anything, but I think I'm fine.
You should. You know what? It's the same. It's the same.
It's
Zoom.
this access. Okay. Cool.
I always use this one to keep it simple. Great.
Excellent.
All right. Should be an interesting conversation next week, I'm sure. There's lots of.
And you didn't
lots of-
change the format on me now, right? I'm listening and I'm asking questions and all that.
No. Totally.
Yeah. See, next week I get to be like you guys. I get a chance to ask the questions as opposed to answer the questions, which is going to be great fun for me. I'm not nearly as good at answering questions as I am at asking questions, and I ask some real doozies. So I think Professor Zora threw me in as like one of those wild cards. It's like we're going to keep the discussion interesting. So
Yeah. No, it should be good. John, thank you very much. Then we'll see you. I'll see you next week.
Next week, and I'll see all of you in 2 weeks. And call seriously, do call if you need anything, have any questions, because I really want to make sure we get put a nice bow on this, so I can start whipping these guys into shape over at AEDC.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thanks, gang.
John.
Take care.
Thank
Great
you, John.
weekend.
Okay, so the good news, guys, is that it looks like there is a project going here, so they've got support. I would keep doing whatever you're doing, and I think he's going to use whatever you come up with to push them in the next stage. The next stage, they got to get legal involved in some point to create the structure, right? And then after that, maybe you make the document a little bit more palatable, and then you start to market this stuff to funds, I think.
Yeah, I think we need a few more answers from Scott and whoever. And then other than that, it's mostly just grind this this pitch book together, because we have a lot of what we need.
So, but the thing is, I'm looking. So, Ben, you're graduating this year, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you potentially have some role in it, at least at the beginning, if this thing takes off. Michael, you're going to be there another year, right?
3 semesters is the plan. So 1.5 years.
So you'll be here next year.
Yeah, next fall.
Okay, fine. And Yaron? 2. Okay. So hopefully you're probably the one that's going to carry this thing throughout more than anyone else, because hopefully with this COVID thing stops, then we could really start, because you won't be able to market this to anyone really if you have to do it online and things like that.
I think part of the point is that, obviously depending on how the election goes, but like a year from now, there could be a huge influx of spending and infrastructure, and we might want to be ready to like hit that ground running with new properties for manufacturing to move into, especially locally.
Okay, very good. Shall we talk a little bit about Inca, or you guys are fine with
I think I'm gonna
Nick?
look back up with Nick tomorrow or Sunday just to get an idea about what he thinks about my research proposal. But he said he wants those finalized by next Friday.
Okay, great. Because we're meeting with him
next week.
Next week. Okay. Oh, not next week. Because next week we have the conference.
I mean, we're supposed to have our monthly check-in with Nick next week. That was supposed to be the deadline for our research proposals.
Yeah, because I think it's usually the first of every month.
Are we not planning on having class next week?
I have the conference at 2:00 starting. Okay, you know what? Let me move him. I don't want to disturb him. Okay, you know what? When is the next one after that? So the last one we saw him was October 6th. November. When did we last saw him? October 9th, 16th, 23rd. So we saw him the last time on the 6th. Is every month. All right, so your expectation is next week with him. Is that what it is? Okay. He told you that, or?
That's our
Yeah,
normal.
mention that in the LinkedIn group.
Okay, all right, all right. So I'll make it early. Let's say we're gonna move it up to next week. We have Evan from an investment bank. He's you know, a graduate, 12 o'clock, 1:30. I'm gonna make it from 1:30. From 1:30 to 2 o'clock. And at 2 o'clock, no, 12:40. I mean, I'll see if I can make it. Well, no, from 1 to 1:30 next week with him. I'll send him the invite. Okay, guys. See you next week. So I'll send the invites. Don't worry, Ben, you'll be on it anyway. Andrew, thank you, guys. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you,
See you
Professor.
soon. Bye.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to email, or in fact, I am emailing Zane about an encryption project, because in my undergraduate degree, I'm doing, you know, like factors, like basically cryptography. And I think that might be a good segue to what Zane's doing with, you know, blockchain, and it's heavy in encryption. So I'm emailing him.
I would love to get him. Yeah, definitely. I would CC me on it. Okay, so he knows that we're part of the same organization, because he may not realize who you are. But yeah, I would love to have a program, something with him. And he's a very, very bright guy. He's doing a bunch of things.
Yeah, like really interesting, like cutting edge.
Oh no, he's out there. So I'd like us to maybe you could offer us something, or you could propose something, and we would be willing to work with us on that. Get a couple of people together on our side. That'd be great. Yes.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.